Oki. Oki in our language means hello. So everybody, Oki. Sukapi, that means good. Well, my government name, or my Christian name, is Herman ManyGuns. My Blackfoot name is Suatsi Tapitopio. I come from the Blackfoot-speaking people in southern Alberta. And there are about 3 different groups of people. We all share the same customs and the belief system and share the land of where we're at. We have a great vast territory that we live on, and we still share that land. So some of the land that we share today goes as far as Edmonton, to the Yellowstone River in Montana, to middle parts of Saskatchewan, to the highest peaks of the Rocky Mountains. So that was a big vast territory that we dominated at one time. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about an introduction about who I am. I was traditionally raised by my grandparents, followed the custom, the belief system of our people, learned to speak the language, practice the customs and our spirituality today. So those are the things I still carry on today on a daily basis. But I am here today just to share a little bit about, I've been working with the University of Alberta, got contacted with Dr. Rob McMahon. And we worked on a digital literacy program on the Piikani Nation of where I am from. And in my culture, where I work on is to engage other organizations and finding approaches, the proper approaches to come into our community and gain information about whatever it may be. So with Rob McMahon, I met him at the University of Calgary. There was another different conference I was at, but at that time I met up with him. He came down and led him through the steps in the proper way of walking into a community. There are certain protocols you have to do. You just don't find the first Indian along the road and tell him, hey, how do I get in here? Sometimes you'll get false information about that. There's a lot of Indians out there that you give me some money first, and the information they give you is not accurate information. So you got to go out and seek out the professors that are out there in that community. If I was going to go find somebody out there in your world that knows about certain things, I'd have to do some research to find the right people, to ask the right questions, to gain that right knowledge that I'm seeking for. So I got to do things too. So that's the same concept when you're coming into a First Nation. There are people out there that we have our own professors, our own doctors. We have our own education systems. We have our own health systems. We have our own governance systems. We're having our own justice systems, and so on. So whatever you're asking for, whatever you want to research, you have to come in and find the right people that know about this. So, and that's where I work closely with. I work closely with my professors as we come in. And that's the first thing I taught the doctor. I'm teaching a doctor, of all things, but how to come in and deal with us First Nations. But he's been a good student. He's learned a lot. He's learned to respect. He's learned to listen. He's learning to take those approaches on taking proper steps in gathering information and setting out things that we're looking forward to. But with the digital literacy camp, we worked together, we discussed that, and we worked with the grade 9 and 10 students alongside with the high school and the board of directors of our school system. But not only that, we work with our traditional knowledge services and also our elders, our traditional elders. So we have different elders. We have elders that know knowledge, that were part of who we are. We had our elders that went to residential school. They know life history. They've seen it. But the next level of the people that know the knowledge, the in-depth knowledge, are the people that have gone into our ceremonies and gone through a system of training. And those are the ones that we seek out, and that's who I work with. It's just like anybody else. All of you are all walking computers today, dealing with light, electricity, frequencies, and a push-button world. That's the modern way of life in the world that we live in today, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in our world, everyone had to go to a venue to gain knowledge. We had to go to a venue to gain knowledge. While you were gaining that knowledge in a venue, there were certain actions that you had to take to acquire that knowledge. And after you acquired the action in that venue where you were at, there were different languages spoken in that school, ever different fields in an education world. There's all kinds of those doors and opportunities, but all the languages are different. So you go through that system. Then at the end of the day, you get a piece of paper that tells you, I am qualified to do this. I get to stand in front of you to do this. I'm the qualified person. That's your credentials. That's your validation system of who you are. In our world, it's the same thing. It's not any different. But we have an oral culture. We have to go through a venue, action there. The language is spoken in different things in the field of the knowledge that we gain. But at the end of the day, all these certain information and knowledge is given to us is not given to us on a paper, but it's given to us with a song. So when we gather as professors in a ceremony, the ceremonials or the head professor that's sitting there, he'll say, well, what's your credentials? And he'll say, well, this is the venue I was at, this is the action I took, this is the language we spoke, and this is my certification of the song. To acquire to sit within the circle of the ceremony. So he'll set you at a certain place where your qualifications are. So we run through a system that's regulated, that we honor and respect. But going through those doors and finding those proper approaches. So whenever you get the knowledge, you come into the community, you go find the right source that's going to guide you. It's like going into the mountains. A lot of you have gone into the mountains. Some of you might know a little bit about the mountains, but there are people that live in the mountains that know it best. So those are the people that you will take to guide you to get to where you're going to go, so you could make it back safe. If you don't know nothing about it, there's always kind of things that can go wrong there. So it's the same approach when you go into a community, when you're dealing with who we are as First Nations. Because a lot of times in what we've worked with in our community, there are people that came in and share a little bit. Well, he'll take the information and I'll never see him again. And that's what happened historically in our way of life. There were earlier people way before us that did that. And with this digital literacy program, when we initiated it, I told the students, we can't not repeat that same mistake from the past. If we're going to start storing information, if we're going to start collecting data about who we are and what we are, we have to do it right. Because back then we had abundance of teachers that were all lined up, an army of teachers that shared our knowledge that were passed on from generation to generation. Today, there's only a handful. So if we're going to set those practices, our customs and our belief systems, we're at the tail end of it. We have to store it now, while we still have some of our ceremonial elders that are still alive that guide us into our way of life. So, and that's how we started with the digital literacy. We hosted a camp. The first time was a pilot project. But by going through our cultural practices, the proper way of setting teepee, putting up camp, giving these responsibilities to the students, everything was hands-on from the land. And when we set the camp, we're not all alone in this world. Taught the students, if we're going to set camp here on this ground, we have to notify Creator that we're going to camp here. We have to follow our custom and belief system according to our practices. Historically, when we camped, we did the same thing. The ground was blessed where we're going to have the camp. So everything that we're going to do was based on truth and honesty. And what we ask for will be given. But also at the same time, you have to invite your surroundings. You have to invite the animal world, notify them, humble yourself to them and say, look, part of this smudge that we're doing, come forward, support us in what we're doing. The water animals, the upper beings, the ground beings, the four-legged, be here with us when we're going to have this camp. So the knowledge that we're going to be sharing will happen. It'll be given to us in a good way. So we'll be able to continue using that teaching as we move forward. That'll guide you as we move forward. So some of those teachings, that's just the tip of the iceberg on the digital literacy camp that we're working on. This year was the official first camp that we really initiated. But the facilitators that came in, it's just like your organizations. Facilitators that come in are all qualified facilitators. They know what they're talking about. The people that are invited, they all know what they're talking about. So we're on that topic about that, communication. So in that camp, when we've put this camp up the second time, all the facilitators were all the professors in our culture that were shared the introductory to open those first steps to start learning about our way, the proper processes and our way of life, the right way. Because a lot of times that's never taught, and a lot of people lose connection of who they are. So that's what I do, is help teach that, the proper things and approaches to gain knowledge for our people. So today we still have a lot of people, our young people are so advanced in technology today, and which is great. There's nothing wrong with it, we need it. It's a tool. It's a very strong tool. But you got to use that tool right to your benefit. Because that tool, we can easily do wrong things with it. And that's what we don't want our children to go in that direction. So part of that teaching about digital literacy and computer and things like that, we share. Through our culture, we're sharing. We're telling them, look, don't do this, but do that. Don't do this, but don't do that. This is your benefit. It's your future as you go forward. So these things is what I do, and this is what we're sharing. And that's why I work so closely together with Rob. He's learned. And that's why I say, if you're going to learn about our culture, you can't just look in the window at us all the time. Because when you look through a window, you can't. There's nothing there. You can't touch it, feel it, sense it, whatever. If you're going to come in, come in. Do it the right way. Do the right approaches. Don't just stand behind a glass with your piece of paper and writing things down and passing that on and say, yeah, well, we consulted you. Nah, that's the wrong way. If you're going to come in, pack up your bags and come in and live with us, be with us, eat with us, show you around, attend our ceremonies, visit with our people, engage with us directly. Because the other way, historically, it never worked. And today, it has never worked. So I'm just leaving you with that little message today. If you're going to work with us, go find the right people. Seek the right people that have that knowledge, that'll guide you. And really get to know the people. We don't capture women anymore. We don't scalp people anymore, what we've been labeled for. We're no longer wagon burners like what we were called at one time. We're different. Our younger generation are getting educated. I'm really glad to see a lot of young people here that come from different parts of our land, that are well educated, that really know what's going on. And they're the trailblazers of tomorrow. So those are the kind of things we got to learn to work together. You know, it's the one thing we got to put that racism to the side, because that's not going to work. We can't always be, we got to sometimes humble yourself to who you are and what you are. In our culture, we're always been told, don't never put anything above Creator. But today it's different. People worship money. They put the money above Creator. And they compete with one another. My neighbor over here has a 4-car garage over here. I'm going to build over here and build 6-car garage over here. I want to have the thickest bank account now. I want to live with all the furnishings that come with it. You're competing. But at the end of the day, when you leave this mighty world, do you take all that with you? No. So sometimes you have to come down to your level if you want to be humble toward anything about First Nations and engaging with First Nations. Because there are people today right now that's still living below poverty. Those, if you're going to come in with anything on our reserve, come in with an open heart and doing a proper assessment. Get to know those people. Go right down to ground zero and find out what those people are all about and help them. It's not their fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's just part of a system. Thank you.
Thank you, Herman. That was, I think, very important wisdom that you shared. Thanks for sharing.